no better time than the present to talk about the Ohio State running back situation. Tim, I was on a radio hit the other day and I was asked to break down the running back situation. So, that was a quicker version of it because they only have 10 minutes between commercials. But it was kind of difficult for me to do because two of the guys that we expect to be mainstays in that room in the fall aren't going to be active in the spring, Travion Henderson and Evan Pryor. Then you have three guys all returning who will be active in the spring: Mayan Williams, Chip Trainum, Dallin Hayden, all three guys who had at least 80 yards in a game at some point this year. It's a really interesting room that Tony Alford has to navigate this spring, don't you think?
Very much so. I mean, it's I wrote that piece about him for us last week, just on the fact that, boy, on paper, does this room look deep? It's as deep as any room in the country from a quality running back situation, and guys who've proven their worth in one form or fashion, like you pointed out. I mean, even Chip Trainum, he started at running back at Arizona State. Now, obviously, was the emergency fill-in this past year for Ohio State, and then you throw maybe Xavier Johnson in the mix as just a guy who might be ducking in and out of the room, but you're not, like you're pointing out, we're not going to have a clear picture of the running back pecking order. Well, we all know what it is, but they're not going to line up on spring game day and then take their turns in that order running the ball. Like you just pointed out, two of the more lethal weapons in that group, Travion Henderson and Evan Pryor, will be, I'm sure, be staying out of spring. I'll be interested to see how much even Mayan Williams goes through the grinds, because he got banged up as the year went on. So, but yeah, it's very intriguing. This will be a much more intriguing conversation, and you guys both know this, like on August 20th, when it's kind of a little bit clearer what it's going to look like. But obviously, this is a moment for Dallin Hayden to take a big step forward, in my opinion. Mayan Williams to maybe claim what I thought for maybe a year and a half now. He has been the more available bell cow, although it should be more like bell bull in that room. And then, of course, Chip Trainum maybe get even into more running back shape than he was at the end of the year.
Andy, is there a guy in this room you think this spring between the three that has the most to gain? Is it Dallin Hayden without a question, or do you think it might be Chip Trainum to kind of prove that he can do it at Ohio State just like he did at Arizona State? Do you have a guy that you think has the most to gain, I guess, this spring in the running back room?
I think it's Dallin Hayden, but I think they clearly like Chip because, in that Michigan game, he was the back we saw the most, at least at the beginning of that game before they got away from the run. And going into the Georgia game, they talked about how they wanted to have him in that running back room. And clearly, they felt strongly enough to pull him away from the linebackers. So he certainly has room to grow. I do think it's just interesting with this position because it was a weakness per se because of all the injuries last season, but now it becomes a luxury because of those injuries. You see other guys getting involved. And now they have experience. And now you come back with five guys to the point where you don't even need to sign a running back in this past cycle. They felt so comfortable that they didn't even feel to have to need to add someone else into that group. So now you've got five guys coming back. And I think it's just really a luxury for Ryan Day to be able to play with that flexibility. Not that you want anyone to get hurt, but I think it's really rare for a program of this caliber to have five guys that really have experience in these kinds of situations. But I certainly think Dallin Hayden has room to grow. I mean, you look at his carries. He had, I think, 111 carries this past season, but 77 of those came in 4 different games. And the Maryland game is the one that sticks out. He had 27 carries in that game. And of his 146 rushing yards in that game, 143 came in the second half, along with 3 touchdowns. And he really powered that comeback in that game. I think that was a kind of cry to the whole Ohio State fan base, showing that like he can be a lead back in the Power 5 for a team like Ohio State. Now the question is, when will he get that opportunity? And it certainly doesn't seem like that's going to be in 2023 if everyone stays healthy.
Hey, real quick, let me ask you something. Those pictures Megan Gunther was throwing up on the screen there as you're talking, and as I was talking, how did Chip Trainum get dirt on his numbers on his jersey when they were playing on artificial turf there in Ohio Stadium against Michigan? Somebody explain that to me. Spencer, you take the ball.
Yeah, I don't know, Tim. That's a good question. I'll have to ask the equipment guys at Ohio State. That's an interesting one. But I do think it's interesting that you bring up the Maryland game because we saw Dallin Hayden get the lion's share of the carries against Maryland when Chip Trayanum probably could have gotten those carries. And then the very next week, after we thought that Dallin Hayden had kind of solidified himself as a go-to option for Ohio State, he becomes a no-show, not because of his own performance, but just because Ohio State didn't give him the ball. And I think I'm still scratching my head as to why he wasn't the guy for Ohio State against Michigan. If you could trust him to carry the ball at night in a night game against Maryland, I don't know why you couldn't trust him to carry the ball at home the very next week after he just had 3 touchdowns and 140 some yards. So, I'm still wondering what the deal was there, but that's all, I guess, water under the bridge at this point because he's going to get a huge share of the carries in the spring because you don't need to push Mayan Williams. Tim, you already mentioned it. You're not sure how much Mayan Williams is going to be active in the spring. You don't need to see a lot, I don't think, from Chip Trayanum to make sure that he's ready to carry the ball. He carried it at a Power 5 level at Arizona State for a while, and he had 83 yards against one of the best defenses in the country in Michigan. So I think that this is a great opportunity this spring with TreVeyon Henderson out and with Evan Pryor still sidelined because of that knee injury for Dallin Hayden to get all of that work. And I mean a lot of work this spring with Tony Alford, be able to solidify himself as, hey, it's not just a Mayan Williams, TreVeyon Henderson room. This is a room that can feature, not just, sprinkle in, but feature Dallin Hayden if you need to.
Yeah, but it's really interesting though, because what is the pecking order? If all these guys are healthy, what is the pecking order? Because, the old line, you need a pair and a spare. Well, they're going to have a pair and a spare and another pair. And, I know they're not into like, quote, keeping people happy, end quote. But to me, I think August is going to be very interesting when the other two guys come back and are full go. And I'm talking about TreVeyon and Evan Pryor, because as we all know, they had plenty of stuff planned for Evan Pryor going into preseason camp after his outstanding spring a year ago. So I'm not even be honest with you, I'm going to be watching this particular situation because Tony Alford, like I said, I did a piece with him about it and talked about how these guys are all for one and one for all and stuff. But boy, this is a definite keep your eye on the portal situation in May, I think, situation of a name or two maybe coming out of that portal. I mean, because obviously it's the name of the game anymore in college football. But that's a real logjam when you really look at it because all these guys have proven themselves in one form or fashion. And I can see being happy when it's your first time getting to play and Ryan Day and Tony Alford saying, well, we just thought Chip Trayanum gave us what we were looking for that Michigan game, what they wanted to do in the running game after Dallin Hayden had really saved their bacon, the week before at Maryland. So I'm just curious. I'm like you guys, I'll be keeping my eye on the transfer portal door, the back door, I guess, to the running back room.
Yeah, and Andy, I think it would be different if all 5 were healthy and you could get a sense of the pecking order heading out of the April 15th spring game. And then you could say, okay, these 2 guys are definitely going to transfer. This guy is definitely going to. But with those 2 guys out, Evan Pryor hasn't even played a snap really of meaningful football at Ohio State. He dazzled in the spring game, but he redshirted as a freshman, was out for his sophomore season. Now he comes in, maybe the most explosive one of the 5. We've never seen him play in a game. Yeah. And so I wonder, Andy, is it a situation where all 5 will stay at the end of spring because the pecking order won't be established because 2 of the top options won't even be participating in the spring, so there won't be a sense of the pecking order?
Yeah, and the fact that Mayan Williams and TreVeyon Henderson could both leave after the season for the NFL. So it's not like you're waiting on a couple of years, even if you are lower on that pecking order, which changes for running backs throughout the season, given injuries, practice, what happens in games, if there's ball security problems, just performance problems in general. So it's not like these guys have to wait forever. So I do think it's a possibility that all 5 stay. And of course, that would be the best case scenario for Ryan Day and Justin Fry as the run game coordinator. And Brian Hartline, of course, is the offensive coordinator. But I think, when you look at this group, it's just really interesting because TreVeyon Henderson, I think we all kind of forget a little bit of just how good he was in 2021 because he was hurt for 2022, especially down the stretch, but really since that Toledo game. And just watching back some of his tape from 2021, just so explosive.
Yeah.
I mean, even after contact, he was averaging more than 4 yards per carry, which is what Mayan Williams did this past season. And you don't really think of Travion as the bruiser type, but he certainly could do that in his true freshman season. And I was looking at 10-plus yard runs as well. He had 34 of those in 2021. So this is a guy that can really do it all. One of those explosive backs that Ohio State has had over the years, whether it's J.K. Dobbins or, like a Trey Sermon or even Ezekiel Elliott. Like Travion Henderson is part of that category. There's a reason why he was starting as a true freshman. And I think just the 1-2, who goes first between him and Mayan Williams is really, really, really intriguing to me, because Mayan Williams was great last year. But who do you even start with in the season opener there? I don't even know who gets to start. And is it just a committee by default, or do you ride the hot hand? It goes back to what Tim was saying. There might be too many mouths to feed. I don't know if it's going to lead to transfers. Like, I actually think that all 5 will stay. But I just wonder how, through the flow of the season, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is we're sitting here and we're going, what is the pecking order? We know what the pecking order is. It's Travion or Mayan. Then who's that third guy? It's Travion or Mayan. Then who's that third guy? The third guy, if he's healthy, you got to think is going to be Evan Pryor, just because of the different kind of pitch he throws or offers you. And then Dallin or Chip Trainum. You know what I mean? It's like there's a pecking order, and then there's not a pecking order. And but they're going to go. I mean, clearly they think Travion is a difference maker, is a home run hitter. The coaches I'm talking about. Mayan has proven himself to be somewhat of a home run hitter. He just didn't get to go. He just didn't get to go to the plate, maybe as often as he could have or should have. And then Dallin, Dallin shows what he's got. We know Evan Pryor's got breakaway speed. I mean, you know how much Ryan Day loves instant touchdowns. We know Evan Pryor offers that outside threat big time, the things they had planned for him. So there is a pecking order and there isn't. I just think this is a very intriguing room. And like you said, Andy and Spencer, we're not going to know really what it looks like till August the 20th.
Yeah, well, good news for us is we don't have to worry about the pecking order as much as Tony Alford does.